Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. There are now clear signs that Pakistan is responding to India's leads following the Pathankot terror attack. After high-level meetings last week involving the army and ISI chiefs, a joint investigation team has been created. Raids have been conducted in Bahawalpur, Gujranwala and Jhelum, and several arrests made. But one key question still hangs in the air. Is this sufficient for the Indo-Pakistan Foreign Secretary talks to go ahead, or does India need specific action against Masood Azhar himself before it's ready to start the comprehensive bilateral dialogue? With the clock ticking and just 48 hours before the talks are scheduled to start, this is the issue we examine tonight. My guests are India's former High Commissioner to Pakistan, Pak Pathankot, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, K.C. Singh, and former Additional Secretary RNAW, Jaidev Ranade. Joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan's former High Commissioner to India, Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, and one of the country's top military analysts, Aisha Siddiqa. And hopefully joining us from Karachi by Skype, former Army General and former Secretary Defence Production, Lieutenant General Talat Masood. Jaidev Ranade, before we come to the key question, whether Pakistan has done enough for the Foreign Secretary talks to go ahead, do you believe the setting up of a joint investigation team comprising the ISI, military intelligence and the Intelligence Bureau, raids in Gujranwala, Jhelum and Bahawalpur, and the arrest of some people amounts to significant steps? Or is it just cosmetic with an appearance of action rather than real action? Which of the two?
Well, I'm quite pessimistic about Pakistan and its intentions. Therefore, I'd describe it as on the face of it, perhaps a cosmetic move, but the fact that they've actually set up a joint investigation team, the fact that they've actually carried out some raids is a step in the right direction. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm not very hopeful.
But are you saying a cosmetic step in the right direction? Because that sounds almost contradictory.
No, what I'm saying is it is a step, a very tentative step in the right direction, but I still would describe it as a cosmetic move. I am not very confident about the end result of what they are doing. I think they will still rubbish the evidence that we present them.
But that hasn't happened as yet, so let's not jump the gun. Pak Pathankot, compared to how Pakistan has responded in the past, and I dare say in particular compared to 2611, is the response this time significantly different and significantly promising, or is that going too far?
I think at this stage we should withhold judgment or final judgment. One has to also remember that the relationship of the Pakistan military establishment with Lashkar and Jaish are considerably different. Jaish was in the doghouse. General Javed Ashraf Qazi accused them of attacking the Indian Parliament, of an attempt to kill President Musharraf. Thereafter they retained links with the Tehreek-e-Taliban, but they are a useful conduit with Afghan Taliban because Jaish has had very good relations with them. So I think we'll have to wait and see, despite this qualitative difference, because Lashkar I regard as a part of the Pakistan military.
It's very interesting, both of you, when you say we need to wait and see, and even Mr. Ranade when he says it's a step, but it could be cosmetic, it may not yield results, are taking a different stand to the Home Minister today. I want to quote what Rajnath Singh said today in Greater Noida. The Pakistan government has said it will take effective action. I think we should wait. But then he adds, there is no reason to distrust them so soon.
No, I look at it this way. If you ask me, I think on this case, President Nawaz Sharif, his whole international credibility is at stake. So he will give it his best shot. Whether he will prevail over the military establishment for full revelations, we'll have to wait and see.
Aisha Siddiqa, one discordant note is that GeoTV has reported that the telephone numbers provided by India are not registered within Pakistan. But given that biometric tests are necessary before you get mobile phones in Pakistan, and secondly, given that the Pakistan country code was clearly dialed, can Pakistan really deny that these are Pakistani numbers?
But I can't tell you about the technicality. What I can tell you is my own experience, that I was away from the country for about a year, and my number was switched off because it didn't have biometric. So I had to do it again. So I'm sure a number which is working would have to be registered somewhere.
And therefore, the GeoTV report is either misleading and inaccurate, or if it's accurate, then it suggests some sort of denial within the Pakistan establishment rather than cooperation. Would that also follow?
Well, I'm sure this is one of the assessments that could be made. What else could one say?
Well, that's very honest, you're right. Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, let me quote from the article you wrote in Pakistan's Dawn newspaper today. You say, and I'm quoting you, a number of NATO countries consider the intelligence supplied by India to be credible leads, if not conclusive evidence. And then you add, along with India, the US and NATO countries lean to the view the attack probably was planned and supervised from Pakistan by elements with a history of association with the intelligence establishment, whether with or without its direct or indirect connivance. What are the chances that your government will come to the same conclusion you've reached?
Well, the government is actually doing something. As you have iterated, the various measures that have been taken. Now, that might not be enough for some skeptics to be satisfied, but I think it is considerably more than nothing. As Aisha said, and quite rightly, I share her ignorance of I don't have technical savviness, but you have talked about the phone code number, etc. And the reports, which are far from confirmed, but which I had received, had suggested that the information that you gave was not superfluous, but on the other hand, they do need to be thoroughly investigated, and for that time is required. And I do think India has understood this and has, at the official level, reacted quite positively. And I would say and hope that on the basis of what has happened after Pathankot, the statements given by the Prime Minister and some of the actions taken, including, as you say, arrests, without a lot more needs to happen for us to have a clearer idea. But I would imagine enough has been done for the talks to get on schedule. Otherwise, it will give rise to again, the kind of mutual suspicion which I don't think is as yet justified. I think, of course, we both share the view that the attack was an act of terrorism, and it should be condemned and has been condemned by both sides. And the Prime Minister has not only said that he would cooperate, but had shown strong indications that he is cooperating. So, and since the talks are only 3 days away, I feel he should be taken at his word right now.
KC Singh, I presume what the Indian government is really keen on, and this is my presumption, is the arrest of Masood Azhar and his brother Abdul Rauf Asghar, both of whom we believe were the masterminds and the planners. Now, although today's Hindu newspaper reports that Azhar's brother-in-law, a gentleman called Ashfaq Ahmed's home, was raided, how likely is it that Azhar himself and his brother Asghar will actually be picked up and detained?
Karan, like to speculate on that. I'd like to put it in a different framework, which is that if we have invested in Nawaz Sharif and the Prime Minister has invested in him, then as earlier speakers have spelt out, we've seen a reaction coming from Pakistan this time which we've not seen before. Now, whether those will add up to something or not, we can see. But now the government of India has to weigh its options is, what do we lose, therefore, in encouraging the Prime Minister of Pakistan and strengthening his playing hand by simply having a Foreign Secretary level meet? After all, this is not a Tashkent declaration about to emerge from the meeting. This is only a preliminary meeting to devise a framework for dialogue. So let the Foreign Secretaries meet. That would probably strengthen the Prime Minister's hand. It keeps the option open subsequently to see what Pakistan does, rather than create new hard red lines like we did about 1 year or about 2 years, which makes then diplomacy inapplicable.
We've got a problem with Mr. KC Singh's line. I'm going to go to Pakistan and hope in the meantime that my producers can put Mr. KC Singh's mic, which is making all sorts of popping sounds, right. Talat Masood, I'm going to stick for a moment to this thought about the need to take action against Masood Azhar and or his brother Abdul Rauf Asghar, because that certainly, sources say, is a critical step our government hopes will be taken. Now, at least twice in the past, Pakistan has acted against Hafiz Saeed, although subsequently he was released by our courts. What stops Pakistan taking similar action against Azhar and Abdul Rauf Asghar? And given that these gentlemen were involved in alleged assassination attempts against General Musharraf, why would you want to treat them with excessive caution and restraint?
Well, I don't think they should be, and I fully agree that if they are involved and if they are complicit in this act of terrorism, there is no reason why they should not be arrested. And, after getting all the evidence, they should be proceeded if they are guilty. So I think we have to wait and see as to how the government seems to be very positive this time. And as you rightly described, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif seems to be very serious because he is genuinely wanting to improve relations with India. He thinks it's in the interest of Pakistan, very much so. And I would also think that General Sharif is with him on this score. So there is no reason why they should, because this will go against the policy of the government as well as the policy of the military. So we can't be dictated by non-state actors, which in the past had a certain role to play. But if they now it seems that the state thinks that it is only the state which is going to formulate and conduct policy and not the non-state actors. And if they try to sabotage anything, then action will be taken against them. So I'm of the view that let us wait and see how genuine. Firstly, we have to also ensure, of course, in Pakistan, that they are the culprits and they have planned and they have acted. So I think the investigations are on at the moment and give them some time.
Very quickly, before I come back to Delhi, I'm going to go to Ashraf Qazi and ask you to give me a message that for my two colleagues in studio who are skeptical, both Mr. Parthasarathy and Jaydev Ranade, both who follow Pakistan, are skeptical that the steps taken are either cosmetic or not sufficient. KC Singh is much more trusting and willing. What can you say, Ashraf Qazi, to convince the two gentlemen in studio that actually it's worth trusting Nawaz Sharif, it's worth giving him more time, and it's worth encouraging him by going ahead with these foreign secretary talks? What can you say to convince them?
Well, I think we've had a reasonably positive beginning after this incident in Pathankot, at both at the verbal level and at the action level. And now the future will show what will be revealed. And of course, I must emphasize that as of now, we don't know exactly what happened, whether it was in Pakistan, whether all the other range of possibilities, which one of them actually happened. An investigation will show that, but a good beginning has begun. I'm aware of the past. I'm aware of the basis on which skepticism is being expressed, but I also believe that if we allow ourselves to be overdetermined by the past, then we won't be able to take any initiatives for the future. And I believe that a lot has happened, and we are taking this very seriously. But as yet, I don't think it is warranted to speak of as if something has happened from Pakistan and that Pakistan must now prove itself and do it immediately and be dictated to, because that sort of leads to reactions which are not positive.
How do you respond to that? Because what he's trying to do is to persuade you, A, a good beginning has been made, B, it's different to the way Pakistan responded previously, C, there's a good chance that if you respond, you could encourage Pakistan to do more.
Let me say that I stand by what I said earlier about I don't doubt the sincerity of Mr. Nawaz Sharif to move ahead. Second thing, I'm not saying let there be no engagement. In my view, a few days down the line, we can't go ahead with the earlier process with this interruption, but certainly the best meeting I've seen is between the national security advisors and the foreign secretaries of Thailand. I think a similar meeting should be arranged as soon as practicable, and I would suggest it should be kept out of the public domain.
Aisha Siddiqa, if the foreign secretaries were to go ahead and meet, and on that as yet we have no indication whatsoever except for the very positive statement by our Home Minister Rajnath Singh, who today said, and I'm repeating it, there is no reason to distrust Pakistan so soon. So if the foreign secretaries were to go ahead and meet, would that encourage Pakistan to take more action with regard to Pathankot? Or would it lead to the conclusion that India is now appeased and no more needs to be done? Which of the two will be the viewpoint in Islamabad if the talks are held?
Karan, let me tell you, let me very quickly get back to Masood Azhar first. See, I come from Bahawalpur, so we share the same town. And for me, there were no indications as such in the past 4 or 5 years that actually there is that deep a mistrust between the establishment and Jaish-e-Mohammed, right? Now, having said that, let me say that what Nawaz Sharif has done has taken a big leap of faith, and what he has done in terms of saying that he's going to take prompt action, he may be able to put the relationship, if there is that, under tremendous pressure. So at this point in time, I think there has to be a constructive method to keep Mian Nawaz Sharif kind of breathing and let him kind of encourage him to move on and keep with that pressure, so that relationship, which didn't even break after December 16th of 2014, does actually break.
How do you respond to that, K.C. Singh? Because what in effect Aisha Siddiqa is saying, that India needs to be understanding and cooperative to help Nawaz Sharif in turn stay firm and take action that India wants. In other words, we've got to give a little to get something back.
No, I would go along with that. I think she's absolutely correct, because what are we giving really? We are simply saying that we'll go ahead with the foreign secretary level talks, and the talks are not to finalize any particular deal. They are not there to hand over Kashmir or any part of Kashmir or Siachen or anything else. It's simply to create a framework for future cooperation. So we can always, the talks can be limited to creating a framework which would politically send a message that we are going ahead and giving support to Nawaz Sharif shaking hands with us, and then see how he plays the cards thereafter. There'll be many more meetings of foreign secretaries and NSAs, but at least the signal will go out to Pakistan that while this inquiry is pending, if there is another attack from any one of these groups, they'll put paid to the whole process. And in the meanwhile, if they come back and they are not able to convince us that they are moving in the right direction, or the Prime Minister can push them in the right direction, we can always pull the plug on the talks later. What is the sanctity about this particular set of talks?
There's a very interesting point being made there by K.C. Singh, and it's based on the understanding that actually what the foreign secretaries are doing is not kicking off the composite bilateral dialogue. All they're going to do is draw up the schedule for it. And there's still going to be a bit of a gap between their meeting and the start of the comprehensive bilateral process. And therefore, there's no reason to call off this meeting, because it's simply scheduling the talks. Does that appeal to you? That go ahead with this. It could send the right message. It could encourage Nawaz. It also shows that there is a certain logic behind Mr. Modi's Christmas initiative, which he's not backing away from. How do you respond to that suggestion?
In that case, why give the talk so much importance? If it's just a question of scheduling the program or drawing up a program for the future, it can be done after a little bit of time, after some confidence has been built up between the two countries. And let me just go back to what Ms. Aisha Siddiqa said. I think she made some very valid points. She also emphasized caution, by the way, and she spoke about the interests that exist between the government establishment there, the military and the security establishment, and the Jaish-e-Mohammed. Would those interests be willing to give up their links with the Jaish-e-Mohammed and hang them out to dry? Or would they continue to retain those links and maybe keep them in a bit of a cold storage for use in the future? That's what I think our skepticism is all about. and what we'd have to wait and see.
General Masood, let me bring you in on that point. You are an Army General, although now retired. You've been Secretary of Defence Production. How does your Army A view the Lahore Christmas stopover, and B, is your Army fully behind the investigation that has begun? I know that at the last high-level meeting on Friday, the Army Chief and the ISI Chief were there and a joint statement was issued, and they were all saying that they will not allow Pakistan soil to be used for terror against any country. But is that just once again for appearance sake, or is there a genuine now convergence between the Army and Nawaz in tackling Pathankot?
Well, I would believe it, sincerely, that I think there is a convergence, because they do understand that there is no question of using non-state actors as a policy, for formulating policy or for inflicting damage and, insurrection in India. That policy has completely failed and has no relevance at the moment. So I don't think our military leaders are such incompetent that they don't understand this. They're intelligent people. They realize the world has changed. They also know that the real threat is internal, and they're fighting, and they have been very successful at that. That is different, that there is a historical background and there is a baggage and so on. I'm not going to get into that. But at the moment, they have really done a great job as far as the internal threat is concerned. They don't want to engage with India at this point of time. They don't want to launch, they don't want to support or be just silent spectators if people from Pakistan keep, attacking India, and then Pakistan getting into a very serious situation. So I think they want that the state must formulate policy, the state must govern and control policy. So I think on this, there are no two opinions.
Well, actually, forgive me, General Talat Masood, there is a second opinion, and that second opinion comes from your country. Unfortunately, the gentleman who holds that opinion is on our show. I'm talking of Ashraf Jahangir Qazi. Mr. Qazi, in your Dawn article today, you say, and I'm quoting you, "It is not yet clear what our military's attitude was to Modi's stopover in Lahore." And then you go on to raise the critical question, has our Prime Minister once again been reined in by the boys to let him know who is boss? Do you fear that the army is perhaps holding Mr. Nawaz Sharif back, restraining him from taking more effective, decisive action, or at least taking that action more swiftly and promptly?
I know what I've written, Karan, but I would suggest in our talks with each other that is my voice being heard?
Yes,
Can you hear
perfectly.
me?
Perfectly. Go ahead. Perfectly.
All right. I'm suggesting that in our conversation today, instead of sort of being speculative and pessimistic on the basis of perceptions with regard to the past, we must look at what is actually happening. And I'm saying this in the context of our conversation, India-Pakistan conversations. And so to look forward, we know of the past, and when we talk amongst each other, we are aware of what Pakistan's interests are, what needs to be done. But I don't want to sort of have a knee-jerk reaction suggesting that it won't be done. And I haven't said that in my article. I have just talked about the need for Pakistan to adopt best course solutions without compromising on principle, and I've said that in the article previous to this one today. So I believe that at this moment we should look at what has happened since Pathankot, and I believe on that basis we need to, and I understand that Parthasarathi himself has just said he's not against talks as such. He's somewhat skeptical about what the outcome might be. Well, let us see whether he's justified or not.
Mr. Parthasarathi, there's some speculation, and I emphasize it is only speculation, that the two NSAs could have a second secret meeting, possibly on the 14th, perhaps in Dubai, when our NSA, Ajit Doval, who's presently in Paris, could be returning. A stop in Dubai makes sense for him. Dubai is just a hop away for Islamabad as well. In these circumstances, and in a sense this is what you were suggesting, how wise a move would it be for them to meet? And B, if they do meet on the 14th, could they clear the way for the Foreign Secretary's meeting 24 hours later?
Listen, Karan, the Foreign Secretary's meeting date was decided before this attack. All right? So, and there is nothing sacrosanct written in stone about the date. The important thing is how do you move to the process envisaged earlier. I think within India, we would first like to meet them and discuss completely in background, in secret, where we stand, and it should be a very frank and blunt discussion. I believe that if they meet, it's fine. They should meet. I would personally prefer not just the NSAs going off on their own. There has to be a diplomatic content to any talk with Pakistan. Therefore, I do believe it should be the NSAs accompanied by the foreign secretaries.
A replica of Bangkok.
A replica of Bangkok should be there. As I have no quarrel with that, because we can't just say that something's written in stone because it happened when things have changed.
Before I go to Islamabad to see how they respond to that suggestion from Mr. Parthasarathy, let me bring you in, Mr. K.C. Singh. If the outcome of the uncertainty at the moment is a decision that the two NSAs accompanied by their two foreign secretaries should meet, be it in secret or be it in public, would that to you suggest the right response from India? Would it A, keep the dialogue going, and B, would it assure Pakistan that India is committed, but we need to find a way around this present problem before we get into the full composite bilateral dialogue or comprehensive bilateral dialogue?
It can be structured like that, though it may create problems of perception in Pakistan, but that doesn't matter. I had always suggested from day one when Pathankot took place that we have a two-track approach. The NSAs are to discuss terror and the Foreign Secretary is the comprehensive dialogue. You can always play around with their sequencing because the NSAs were supposed to meet next month, and at that stage Pathankot was not foreseen. So if you have an incident like Pathankot, then perhaps it makes sense to either club the two or quickly have a meeting of the NSAs. Why a secret meeting? Though that's what Pakistan may be desiring. It can be an open meeting, quick one, and then you can postpone the foreign secretary level talks, announce the date and say they will meet a week later or 10 days later. But I think simply to keep a cloud over the foreign secretary level talks would send a wrong signal when for the first time ever, we are seeing non-denial, no automatic denial coming from Pakistan, and at least some kind of action being taken, even if the outcome is unknown at the moment.
Aisha Siddiqa, how would those suggestions go down in Islamabad? Either clubbing foreign secretaries and NSAs and doing a combined meeting like Bangkok, or quickly preceding the foreign secretaries with another NSA meeting?
I think the NSAs need to talk, and I think talk more often, because one looked at, I mean, you know, the two issues which came out of Pathankot, two questions. One was, you know, who was behind it, and we've yet to solve that issue. But the other was, is the military on board as far as talks are concerned? What had happened? You know, there was Narendra Modi visit to Lahore and all of that. And the feeling one got in Islamabad was that perhaps the issue was less with the Modi visit, but making it personal between two politicians and two political leaders. And the thing was, the military looks at it as a systemic and as an institutional issue. So it has to be between two states, two institutions, rather than two persons. Now, if that is a mindset, then I think NSA and the new NSA is the military's man here. Bring him in more into the conversation. You know, that's where they want the conversation to be. I mean, let me remind you, when General Kiani and Pasha were there, Pasha tried to reach out and said, have conversation with us. If ultimately that's what's required, then I think it's a good idea that NSAs meet more often.
Very, very quickly, Ashraf Qazi, because we're going to lose that line to Islamabad within seconds. How much do you agree with Aisha Siddiqa and how much do you disagree? But keep your answer short because we'll lose you soon.
I actually think the Foreign Secretary talks should go ahead as scheduled. This doesn't mean that the NSA talks can't take place, but to try and reverse the order right now would send all the wrong signals to Pakistan, and that wouldn't help. it would look like a revival of the post-UFA situation when we don't want to go back there since we've emerged from it. So I would recommend that while we recognize skepticism, in view of the past and whatever, I would recommend that in view of what's been happening on the ground as well as our statements, that we keep the Foreign Secretary talks on schedule, and we can sort of have the NSA talks immediately afterwards or whatever it is, but not at the expense of the FS talks being postponed.
What about the opposite of what Ashraf Qazi is suggesting? Keep the Foreign Secretary talks on schedule, let them happen on the 15th, but ensure that the NSAs meet in advance, which they can, and on the 14th, clear up whatever issues they are to clear so that the Foreign Secretaries can go ahead. Does that make sense to you?
I don't think it's feasible. The NSA is meeting and within a day clearing up all the issues. It's not going to work. There has to be a satisfaction to the people, at least in India, that something is being addressed, that Pakistan is actually taking some substantive steps. After all, the history is not been very satisfactory so far.
What about Mr. Rajnath Singh when he says that we should wait? In other words, give Pakistan that time to take the substantive steps. And clearly, 3, 4, 5 days may not be enough for them.
Exactly. So we are saying that we should wait for Pakistan to take some substantive steps. I think on both sides there has been a lot of restraint so far. The only point of disagreement could be on the second part of a statement, where he seems to indicate
there is no reason to distrust them so soon.
Exactly.
And clearly, that is a suggestion that would lead most sensible people to conclude that Mr. Rajnath Singh is preparing his government for actually saying we'll go ahead with the Foreign Secretary talks. Because you don't say this if in 24 hours you intend to call off or postpone those talks, do you?
It could well be. It could well be that he's preparing the ground. At the same time, he hasn't made a commitment one way or the other.
Very quickly, K.C. Singh, because I think I've lost my two Pakistani guests. How do you interpret what Rajnath Singh has said, and particularly the last half of that statement, there is no reason to distrust them so soon?
Which means they probably think a quick meeting of the NSAs or wherever would probably re-engage India with the military's thought processes and reassure ourselves that they are on board. The 2 points that Aisha Sadiqa was raising, and that there is a roadmap on how they want to move on the terror issue, particularly Pathankot inquiry. Now, once that assurance comes in, and if we are satisfied, then perhaps the talks can go ahead. They may take a call after the meeting.
Very quickly, General Masood, because you're still with us from Karachi, would your NSA be willing to have a quick meeting in Dubai with our NSA? The speculation in Delhi, and it's only speculation, is that such a thing could be possible. Not likely, just could be possible, because our man will be returning from Paris tomorrow night, and he could stop in Dubai. Your man could easily get to Dubai. It's not very far away. But would that be acceptable, particularly if it's a way of clearing the deck for the foreign secretaries the next day?
Well, I'm of the view that what is there to clear the deck? I mean, either Pakistan is doing the right thing or is not doing the right thing. You see, so for that, let the foreign secretary's talks continue, and also they should meet I think the national security advisors should also meet, but they should meet after the foreign secretaries. I don't see that he should proceed, because even if they meet now, unless there is, they have done so much of homework, and if all the evidence is there, then only India can be assured. The point here is that what we are trying to say all along is that Pakistan is taking genuine, sincere steps towards making sure that if these people are involved, then they will be punished, and we will fully cooperate with India. So that is the test for Pakistan, and that is the test for India to show patience. Now, if whether they meet first or they meet second, that is not, subsequently, that is not important. What is important is whether Pakistan is taking the right line of action or not. And I have a feeling that this time they are, and allow them, give them some time, and do not pass judgments, and do not conclude things by just saying that if these two people will meet, they will be able to gauge each other to a point where Pakistan's sincerity will be exposed, or will become apparent.
Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. We're discussing the critical question: has Pakistan taken sufficient steps for the foreign secretary level talks to go ahead, or is more required? K.C. Singh, let's very quickly look at the downside. I take it that after the steps Pakistan has taken and after the comment made by Rajnath Singh in Noida this evening, that talks will not altogether be called off. Does that mean that the downside is postponement? And if the answer is yes, what impact will that have on Indo-Pak relations?
Depends how long you postpone them and on what conditions. What is it that becomes your basic minimum that you demand from Pakistan? Now, if the basic minimum is arrest of all the top leadership of Jaish-e-Mohammed, that's probably unlikely to happen at this stage. If the basic minimum is you found more clarity that Pakistan should not keep demanding unnecessary proof or saying numbers don't exist or what you were putting in the GeoTV, so absurd sort of counter queries should stop coming from Pakistan, then that is something Pakistan should reassure us, that it should not be simply asking questions when the conspiracy, like in case of 2611, was hatched there. They must do all the pulling and the tugging. Okay. They can't be just sitting on their hands. Now that is something where some red lines, there have to be some clarity on that. Because if you leave it vague, then the postponement becomes indefinite.
General Masood, I want to ask you the same question. How would Pakistan view a postponement of the talks? But a short answer, sir, because time's our enemy.
Well, I think it would be very demoralizing, and I think it will take the sort of spirit behind the move, which, Prime Minister Modi and Nawaz Sharif have been wanting to sort of truly engage with each other and be genuine and sincere to each other. And they were wanting to have good relations, and now I think this postponement would mean that the non-state actors are really determining the policy between these two countries, and we are back again in the same mold as we were in the last several years. So I would think it would be a very unwise move to postpone anything. I think we should send a strong message to the non-state actors. They cannot destroy this, continue to destroy this relationship whenever you try to build bridges.
Won't the postponement, if the postponement happens, and it's a huge big if, actually leave Mr. Modi looking very compromised and contradicted? Because he would have known and he would have factored in the likelihood of a terror attack when he visited Islamabad to wish Nawaz Sharif happy birthday on Christmas. Now when that expected terror attack has happened, if he does a U-turn and backs away from his own initiative, people will turn around and say, was it gimmickry? Do you lack nerve? Do you lack conviction? Questions will be raised about him.
Well, he'll be open to criticism whether he does and whether he doesn't. So I think here, if he takes a bit of time, and no one is saying an interminable length of time, some time, for Pakistan to take some action.
How much
because
time?
From the discussions,
how much time are we talking about?
Well, it could be a week, it could be 3 days, it could be 10 days.
What's a week's postponement going to achieve?
No, I'm not talking about postponement for the sake of postponement. I'm talking about for Pakistan to deliver. Because from the conversations that I've heard just now, it's almost like we've set the bar very low or not at all. Pakistan has just made a few steps, taken a few steps right now, made a few gestures, I'd call it, and I don't think that is satisfactory enough.
Well, it seems to me that what Pakistan has done in terms of Pathankot in 1 week is much more than we did in terms of Samjhauta in the same space of time. So clearly,
the two are not. I don't know.
The two are quite different. In our country.
They're
happened in our country.
They're quite different. They're quite different. It happened.
But what I'm saying to you is that these things. What I'm saying is these things take time.
If we did it in Pakistan, that would be the same.
No, but hang on a second. What I'm saying is these things take time. I'm talking about the efforts made to actually investigate. We need time just as they need time. Surely, therefore, giving them more time doesn't mean that you're investing heavily in faith.
No, but it does mean if we don't give them time or if we go ahead with the talks, it means that it doesn't matter to us whether there was a strike or not.
Very quickly, this is my last question. What's your hunch? Will the talks happen on the 15th or not?
I can't preempt what
but
the
you must have a
government
hunch.
No, I would not like to have a hunch in this thing. I believe in trust and verify. I trust Mr. Nawaz Sharif's intentions, but I want to verify precisely what...
But you're not going to tell me what you think
I would
happen.
like to precisely wait to see what are General Rahil Sharif's intentions. For that, the NSAs have to meet.
That's more
important. All right, we're back to your original position. The NSA's meeting is the most important thing. I'm going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we end the show with roughly 48 hours if you just go by the full days that are left before the meetings are supposed to happen. Whether they happen or not is still impossible to say. My thanks to you for joining me. My thanks also to all my other guests. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.
Ansari, who was there with many other friends trying to take a selfie. The latest that we are hearing is that Ramesh Valunja's body has been found at Mahim near Dharavi.